Okay, so we've been through a lot of introspective talks today, which honestly have moved me immensely. Um, and I think that, I'm so privileged to be able to share some of my learnings with all of you. So a big thank you to Ashoka's team, the entire TEDx team for having me, having me part of this. I know you'll edit this out, so it's great. Okay, so here's the central idea that I want to talk about. And why I feel so motivated to talk about it is something I'll tell you at the end of the talk. But the central idea and the question that I want you to start thinking about, what if the foundation of our entire economy was laid in the form of invisible work? The entire economy that we see today around us, what if that has been built not through the systems that we think it's been built on, but rather on the backs of women's unpaid care work? So I'm going to start off with this question, and I'll provide you with some evidence today that will hopefully convince you that this is the case. So when I started my research and when I started Nikore Associates around 2019, one of the first pieces of work that we did as a team was to analyze something called the time use survey data. And this is released by the Government of India almost every 5 years. But in the 2019 data, it was the first time it had been done at that time. Now we have a 2024 as well. And the findings were just shocking, because we found that women were doing 5.6 hours on average. I'm saying averaged across women across the country, 5.6 hours of unpaid care work every day. But the more shocking part, men were doing 30 minutes. The difference was so humongous. The vast gap that existed in these two worlds that men and women inhabited, it explained a lot. It explained a lot of economic questions that I was being asked constantly in rooms that I was in by policymakers who were saying, I can't figure out why women aren't in the workforce. I said, really? Why don't you go home and ask your wife? She packed your lunch for you. So these are just some experiences I wanted to share with everyone. These are visuals of a recent field trip that we did with my team, that I did it in a state I don't need to mention. Actually, you can guess it probably later. But the important thing is that this is probably a picture that you would see in any part of rural India if you go. You'll see what are the women doing in these pictures. You have a woman who's carrying firewood to take it to her home. You have a woman who's carrying water because she has to travel nearly 10 to 12 kilometers, maybe even 50 kilometers if there's a drought, to provide water for her family. And you have women working in a local tailoring shop trying to make a little bit of money for 2 hours every day, because that's the only time that they have between the care work responsibilities that they have to do for their household. This is expected to some extent. We've read this in our economics textbooks. We've read this in newspaper articles. We've seen this in the news. But I think the next set of pictures is more interesting, and even I found them a bit surprising. So you have this chopal, right, in the town, and all these guys, like 4 or 5 of them, sitting with their phones with each other. They're not actually talking. They're just on their phone. Probably doing some shared activity, I'm not sure, I didn't approach them. Then you have this other guy who's just sitting there, and we actually came back 2 to 3 times during that day to check, did he move? He didn't. He was on his phone for 8 hours. And he was definitely not working. And then you have all of these guys just again sitting there, And we saw instance after instance of this when we were on ground. Why is it that men are just sitting around? If you don't have a job, do housework, help your family. No. They have a license, you see, they're men. They're not expected to work at home. They're expected to be outside and making money. But no, they're not doing that. They're not getting jobs. Understandable. That's the economy we live in. But they spend their time loitering. But for women, we always ask this question, why do you loiter? And that's when you start to see the entire puzzle of women's labor force participation starting to absolutely explain itself. Because in the 1980s, 1990s, actually women's participation was a bit high. And then we started seeing them drop out of the workforce at an alarming rate, such that in 2017, 2018, you didn't have that many women in the workforce, just 20%, and all of them were coming from rural areas, hardly any from urban areas. And now, when we are being told that the women's workforce participation rate has increased, we're back to 40%, why is that? That is again not coming from urban areas. So our team at Nikore Associates just finished a study in Delhi NCR. And I don't want to demotivate the women here, but the findings are that if you are a woman from Delhi, a woman living in any part of Delhi, there's a 4 out of 5 chance that you won't be in the workforce. 4 out of 5 women in Delhi are outside the workforce. And the most cited reason is care. The reason is that they feel that with motherhood, with marriage, with care responsibilities, they cannot go back to work. Is going to work important for women? I think every single person in our sample in Delhi said yes. Every single woman in this room will say yes, because you want to have your own earnings. You want to have your independence, and you don't want someone telling you, you can do this and you cannot. And only when you're financially independent can you actually have that choice. But the care burden is something that stands in the way. And even if you look at the national data, it doesn't matter who you are. Whether you're working, you're not working, you're educated, you're not educated, you're living in a city, you're living in a rural area, the care burden falls only on women. Again and again and again and again, one generation, then the next generation, then the third generation. Why? Why is it that even now, men haven't learned that housework is their job too? Why do they have to be told this? Why aren't they being told this? That's the question that we must all ask ourselves. That at the end of the day, why am I going to college and university and workplaces, and when I talk about this work that we've done, I am often dismissed. People say, नहीं, ये तो महिलाओं का काम है, मैडम, आप क्या कह रही हैं यहाँ आकर? I have heard these lines said to me. And which is what convinces me even more that we have to keep saying it. That raising a family, building a family is important for everyone. But it is not one person's responsibility in a family unit, no matter what that family unit looks like. And I think that is really where we have to start making a change. In order to do that, we actually did a study, and we said, you know what? This is an economics issue. Currently, you have a free supply, unlimited supply of unpaid labor. What if we put a value to it? And we did. We found that women's unpaid care work in India is equivalent to 15 to 17% of the GDP. Of course, this is never valued in our traditional economics architecture. But to our surprise, the government of India was actually very open and very appreciative of this number. They said, this is fantastic. This gives us an opportunity. Let's not look at this, and I agree with them. Let's not look at this as a number which says, this is what women are doing and not getting paid for it. Yes, it is. But it's also an opportunity of just imagine the kind of businesses, the kind of services, the kind of infrastructure. Once you invest in it, you can unlock a whole new economy, the care economy. And that's what we're working on now. And there are solutions that are in place. I visited this childcare center. It's right here in Delhi. I would encourage everyone in this audience to, get out of the university whenever you can and visit some of these facilities. It's amazing how children are coming together, playing at a government-sponsored facility. This is actually sponsored by the government. And it's literally a very little small example of the government putting its money where its mouth is and delivering. It's a rare example, but it's happening in Delhi. They've actually started 500 of these, which are, again, being set up alongside Anganwadi centers. We visited some of these childcare centers in rural Gujarat, which are run by Seva. And Seva, of course, as you know, is one of the foremost organizations in this country working on women's rights. One of the things that stayed with me in this visit is the photo that you see on the extreme right. The Anganwadi center had been torn down. The building had almost collapsed, so it had actually been decommissioned and torn down. But the women there were so committed to the childcare work. They knew that if this childcare facility was not available, the women of their communities could not have gone to work, could not have gone to tend to their fields. They opened the childcare center, the Anganwadi, in their homes and started taking care of the children there. And they fought to get approval from the government to run the childcare center from their homes until the building was commissioned again. The amount of love, the amount of care that these women have to bring up children in a manner where literally they learn better, they're healthier, they feel safe, and they have nothing. They're working with nothing. This is another example of a slum in Mumbai. And you can see the entrance. When I was going through this with my team was literally like, Mitali, where have you brought us? Why have you brought us here? Where are we going? And in the end, we turned up in the middle of this absolute shack where one wall is a container. And there was a thriving childcare center running inside it for all the daughters and sons of the domestic workers of that community. They are, again, surviving with nothing. There's no support. So very honestly, we know that there are solutions. At forums like this, we've tried to put forward some of the solutions. There's a wonderful solution from the Kudumbashree of Kerala. I don't know if any of you have heard of Kudumbashree, but it's a fantastic association of women working at the community level in Kerala, trying to provide elders in the community with the kind of care that they need. Just going and checking in on them. Are you okay today? Did you take your medicines today? How many of us do that even with our families? But these are the kind of solutions that need funding. They need support. They need people to stand up and talk about them. Today, I could have chosen to talk about my journey. Today, I could have chosen to say, you know what, here is me. I have done these things, and I'm really proud of them, which I am, honestly. I mean, it's hard to have built Nikore Associates. But I want to talk about the care economy because all of you are going to go into policy or economics or businesses where you will be faced with an opportunity to take a decision that could alter a woman's life. So please have this understanding, this empathy, that for every woman, there are two jobs that she's doing. There's a job that she does in the workforce if she's working, but then there's a full-time job that she does at home, which she's not paid for. And if you're a man in this audience, and if you have other male friends in this audience, please tell them, let's up this, let's have a target, let's up this from 30 minutes to at least 2 hours every day. Pitch in, do your bit, share the load. These are all corporate slogans. I'm not going to give you these slogans. I'm going to tell you, this is your responsibility. This is a future, a forgotten future. Because we're living in a world where talking about diversity, equity, inclusion is now being looked down upon. We're living in a world where countries like the US are actually coming and saying DEI is a human rights violation. But that's not the world we want to create. So the forgotten future, we have to change that. We have to build a gender equal future. We have to build a future that's including everyone. And for that, we all need to build and contribute to the care economy. Thank you.